Good morning. I've just sent you the syllabus on your WhatsApp in this module. So I understand it's applied human resource management, right? Okay. So for your sake, Nomsa,
Yes.
my name is Brighton Da Silva. Yeah, so I'll be taking you on this module on applied human resource management. I guess there's no need for me to provide my mobile number. You already have it. He already knows me. I was already with him last semester, so that's why I'm saying only for your sake. I just had to introduce myself. Yes, so the course outline is the one that I've just sent you on your WhatsApp. It has about 13 areas that we have to cover. That really shows that it's a long module, and it has a lot of areas that we are supposed to tackle. So the first area that we're going to look at is on introducing what human resource management is all about, which I do believe that you do have some basic knowledge about what human resource management is about at this stage. Yeah? All right. Yeah. Are you doubted? All right. Yeah, just at least some basic information. If somebody was to say that, can you define what human resource management is all about? I bet you can briefly explain what it is all about. So there we'll talk about the nature of HRM, and then we'll talk about the business strategy and human resource management. So that's on chapter 1. Chapter 2 is about human resource planning, which for Rumbani, I guess this is not a new area, because last semester we were doing a full subject on human resource planning. But here we are tackling it as a component in human resource management. Okay? In applied human resource management. Yeah, so we'll talk about human resource plans. So much as every business does have a strategic plan, but each department is required also to have their own divisional plans, departmental plans. So the human resource planning talks about basically the planning at the level or the department or concerning the human resource. So what are we planning? So we are planning in terms of the human resource requirements for the organization. Because when we are recruiting people or when we are trying to employ people in an organization, we are not only looking at the current needs, but we are also looking at the foreseeable future. Because each and every organization has a strategic plan, and usually you agree with me that a strategic plan covers a period of 5 years, right? Minimum. You'll find that many strategic plans will talk about a 5-year plan. So it means that even when we're employing people, we're not only looking at now, we're looking at 5 years from now. Okay? And we do have plans that we have set in the next foreseeable years. So the question is, when we are recruiting a person, it's not just a matter of filling in the gap, but we also have to look at the competence. We have to look at the skills of that particular person. Is he matching for the future requirements as well? Because if he's not matching, then it means he will only work for 1 year and we're going to fire him and we're going to bring in somebody else, because we're looking at some of the skills that will be needed in the future. So human resource planning will look at, well, how important is it? So we all know how the importance of planning. So in an organization, we'll talk about what is the importance of human resource planning. And then we'll also talk about the approaches when it comes to human resource planning. So on the approaches, we'll look at 2 approaches. We basically look at the supply as well as also the demand. So when we are recruiting people, it means we basically balance or assess based on what is the demand, but also looking at where are we going to find these people. Requirement and availability. Requirement justifies the demand. Someone has left, there's a demand that has been created. Somebody has retired, it means there's a demand that has been created. And then the next question will be, where are we going to find them? So we are looking at availability. So that's why we talk about external recruitment and internal recruitment, which means that these employees can be found from within or they can be found outside the organization. So it's either we're doing an external recruitment to fill in that particular gap, or we're basically looking at an internal recruitment. Then we are also going to forecast in terms of the human resource. So how are we going to forecast? The same issues that we are talking about, demand and supply. So how do we forecast in terms of demand? How do we forecast in terms of supply? Those are the issues that we'll be talking about. Then we'll also look at some of the requirements for effective human resource planning. So for us to plan effectively, what are some of the things that we need in an organization? So that's what we'll look at in terms of the requirements for effective human resource planning. The third area that we're going to look at is concerning recruitment and selection. So you can see how the order is in the syllabus. Because first of all we are planning, then later on we are coming in with recruitment and what? And selection. Because it means that we're not just recruiting anyhow, but we are recruiting based on our plans. And we have forecasted to see that indeed there is a demand. And we have also looked at where are we going to find them in terms of supply, availability. Where are we going to get them? Internally or externally? So that's why you find that some vacancies are only for internal application. It means those already within the organization can apply. Or some, you find that they want somebody from the outside. So we are talking about the process of recruitment and selection. These are two different things, although they go hand in hand. But recruitment is another story, and again selection is another story altogether. But we'll talk about this in terms of what is recruitment and what is selection. We are going to determine how recruitment is done. We are going to determine how selection is done. How is the process of attracting people to apply for jobs? That is what we'll define in terms of recruitment. Then we'll talk about how do we select now these human resource personnel that we have already attracted. Now how do we basically select from the list of the people that we have recruited? So that's another topic that we are going to basically deal with. And then number 4 is that we're going to look at equal opportunities in workplace. This is again a very important area. I don't know whether you have noticed when you look at a lot of vacancies that you see in the newspaper, you'll find that again, they'll say that such an organization is an equal employer. What does it mean? It means simply that they are trying to promote the idea that they do offer equal opportunities to all people. So in the countries that we are living in the Western countries, you hear about racism, and all that. But the question is, when we come at a workplace, does the organization promote that everyone has equal opportunities? We should not be subjective. We should not be discriminatory, that because he's a female, then we're going to give them a promotion. But because he's a male, then we're not going to give him a promotion. No, because this one is coming from the north, then we're going to give him a promotion because he's my fellow person. We're coming from the same region. It should not work like that. What we are saying is that we should offer equal opportunity. So whether it is about the opportunity to go for training, everyone should be basically have that equal opportunity. If it is about promotion, everyone again should have an equal opportunity. And that's what basically we're looking at, that in the workplace. How are we going to promote in terms of equal opportunities? So it may not only just be as a policy, they say that yes, we do promote equal opportunity, but it should be in terms of the practice. What is going on to make sure that indeed you're giving out equal opportunities? So we're going to define what equal opportunities is. What is the legislative framework? So if we're talking about legislative, we are talking about basically the law. Legislative. And then we're also going to look at how effective is the legislative system. And again, what are some of the initiatives that the organization can take towards promoting equal opportunities? So we don't want people to feel out of place. We don't want people to face inequality. I do believe that in management you did learn about a theory of equity. Equity theory. So we know the consequences where employees, if they feel that they are being unequal treatment, we know the consequences of that. One of the consequences is that you leave the field, you leave the work, yeah, according to that theory. So those are some of the consequences. So we don't want that to happen. So we have to basically make sure that we are promoting equal opportunities at workplace. Number 5 is that we're going to look at what is a learning organization. Yeah, so in HRD or in development, you might have maybe come across this topic on learning organization. So there is also the opposite terminology of it, what is also known as organization learning. So there's learning organization and there's organization learning. But what we are going to look at is a learning organization. So what does it mean to have a learning organization? It is an organization that basically facilitates learning for all its members, for all its what? Employees. So we do know that we do learn from day to day what? Experiences. So the question is, do we provide a platform for people to experience new things so that they can learn? All right? So some organizations are too closed. They don't allow their people to learn new things. So that is not a practical example of a learning organization. So a learning organization should ensure that it builds a team, should ensure that it facilitates learning for all its members. So we will look at the process of learning. We'll define what a learning organization is. How do we create a learning organization? And one of it is, as I said, you need to provide a platform for people to learn and allow people to make mistakes, because that's the only way that people are going to learn. Again, why the learning organization and why now? So we know because of the changes of the environment, it means we have to keep up with the pace of the changes. It means people should also embrace the continuous learning process. Okay? So we do continuously learn. So because of that, it means that again, we understand why should we be looking at a learning organization. And again, we'll look at the learning organization company. Does it exist in practice as an organization? That is something that we're just going to personally assess. Then number 6, we're going to look at what is organization performance. So the word performance is vague. The word performance is subjective because everyone can define the word performance differently. Somebody scores 48 in class, he may still say that I have performed well. So it's subjective. Yeah? So we'll look at it in terms of what does it mean when we're saying that an organization is performing. Are there any initiatives? Are there any indicators? Are there variables that we can see that yes, the organization is performing? So it's not just only about profits. Yeah? There are also other indicators that show us that the organization is what? Is performing. Then one of the issues that again we'll talk about in organization performance is in total quality management, TQM. How do we ensure that we promote quality throughout? So when we're talking about total quality, we are looking at that TQM is a philosophy that is supposed to be built in an organization so that we ensure that quality is basically emphasized throughout the whole organization. So whether you're producing, total quality should not only just be emphasized in the production department. Right away from the information office, people should see that indeed you are promoting issues concerning quality. So that's why it's known as total. We're looking at all the departments of the organization. They should embrace this as a philosophy, that they should ensure that they are basically promoting areas of quality management. Then number 7, we are going to look at issues concerning performance management. So we can see again that the issue of performance is very important. So we have recruited people. We're not just going to leave them. We have to going to make sure that they are performing in the organization. And the only way to look at this is through the performance management process. How do we manage the performance within the organization? We need to set objectives. We need to assess what people are doing. We need to evaluate. And if anything, we have to take corrective measures to make sure that the employees are performing. But the most important thing is they have to know in terms of their objectives. Because you will not know whether you're performing or not because you don't have a standard, you don't have a measure. So how do we have a measure? We have to set an objective. So if I give you a target to say, if you're a salesperson and say, I want at the end of today you find 1 million sales. You have to come up with 1 million sales. I've given you a what? A target. At the end of the day, I can compare with what you have done to make sure whether you have performed or not. So we'll be looking at issues of performance management. So we'll define and we'll look at the objectives of performance management. We'll look at the main elements of performance management system. We'll look at the performance management and the business strategy. How do we align ourselves with the business strategy? We'll talk about issues of performance appraisal, which is part of the performance management process. So much as we are managing performance, it means that again we have to also find ways of how we're going to appraise people for those that are performing well. So remember that a behavior that is not reinforced becomes weaker. A behavior that is reinforced becomes stronger. So no one would want to just be performing better and not get something in return. They have to be appraised. And there are so many ways on how basically you can appraise employees. So that's something that we again will be looking at. What are the objectives and the parties involved in performance appraisal? Who are the people who are involved in performance appraisal? What is the objective behind it? One of it I've already said is to reinforce. You want to make sure that people continue to perform. If anything, you want to encourage them. If anything, you want to motivate them. Yeah? And that's just one of the objectives that we'll be talking about in terms of performance appraisal. Who are involved are basically your peers, are your colleagues, are your supervisors. Yeah? So those are the parties, some of the parties that are involved in performance appraisal. What are the forms of assessment? We'll talk about the different forms of how we can assess in terms of performance. So either way, we are also talking about issues of performance appraisal. What are the methods? So you might have heard about the 360 degrees feedback. One of the methods that we can use in terms of performance appraisal. So that's on number 7. Yeah, so we'll also talk about the characteristics of a dynamic performance appraisal program. We'll talk about the importance of goal setting in performance improvement. So goal setting, as I've already said, is that you cannot manage people's performance without first of all setting the objectives that have to be accomplished. So how important is it for us to set goals? Obviously, it's for us to have a measure to know whether someone is performing or not. Number 8 is basically that we are going to recognize performance through rewards. So reward management. Yeah? So we're going to look at the types of reward practices. So we know that they can either be non-financial or financial rewards. So there are some rewards that are given that are non-financial. You go in the banks, you see these posters, you see these portraits that have been put, employee of the month, employee of the year. Those are rewards, but they are non-financial. Sometimes you get a trophy, employee of the month. It's non-financial, but it is a reward. Yeah, I've seen you play basketball. Yeah, you get a trophy. That's non-financial, isn't it? Yeah. So whether you're team of the month, you're player of the month, then basically that's a reward that is non-financial. So we talk about motivation and reward. So obviously these two go in hand. So when we're giving in rewards, what we are seeking for is that the employee should be motivated. But we have to make sure that again, the rewards can be durable. Because it's possible for me to give you a reward today, but tomorrow you come back to work, you're no longer motivated. And a typical example of that reward is money. Because I can give you money today. If you go shopping and you finish that money, that's the end of it. Tomorrow, you're gratifying again because the money is gone. But a trophy, you can see it every day in your room. You'll be happy for the sense of accomplishment. So these are things that we'll be discussing in terms of issues of reward. What are the types of reward schemes? Performance-related pay. How can we attach that our pay should be hand in hand with the way how we are performing? Are there any methodologies on how we can do this? Then number 9 is that we are going to look at the flexible workforce and effective teams. So again, we have to make sure that our employees are people that are flexible to undertake different roles. Yeah, that's why even in HR we talk about issues of job rotation. We talk about job enrichment. We talk about job enlargement. It means that as employees, we should not be static. We should not just be set in one place. As a player, you cannot just be in one position. You should be able to maneuver in absence of someone in a different position. You should be able to maneuver and get into that particular position. So again, even as workforce, we are saying that there should be people that are what? Flexible. At the same time, can we work as a team? Yeah, team building. Because what makes an organization also to perform is the ability to work together as a what? As a team. Can we coordinate together? So are we working as a team? So according to one of the management theorists, according to Henry Fair, he talks about this also as his 12th principle, where he says that people should have a spirit of working what? Together, a spirit of the corps, team spirit. So how can we build a team? Yeah, so we have to look at team building. And again, we have to look at, effective teams. So there are some teams that are also what? Ineffective. That's why one team lost last night. That's why one team lost last night. It means they were what? Ineffective, isn't it? Yes, and the other one came out to be what? Effective. Whatever made them to do that, it means they had a strategy. They had a plan, and they executed it. And they succeeded. Truth of the matter is, irrespective of whichever team you support. Yeah? Yeah, so we do have some teams that even when we combine them, it's nothing. Yeah? But sometimes it depends also on looking at people's personality, looking at the blend of the skills that people have. Yeah? If they cannot blend together as a puzzle, then it will not be effective. Yeah? So we also look at team-based working and its implications on the human resource function. Then number 10, we'll talk about employee relations. Yeah? So you might have also done this topic in terms of labor relations in HR. So we'll also talk about employee relations. How do we relate with our employees? We have to have always good employee relations. So we're talking about relations. This relationship is between the employer and the employee. So who are the participants? We have employees, we have trade unions, we have employer, we have the state, the government. Because the government is the regulator, is the one who comes up with the laws that govern the relationship between the employer and the and the employee. And then we also have trade unions, staff unions, student unions. You come up with your own constitution, right? So what does that constitute? The relationship between you as a student and the management of the school. That's why you come up with a constitution. So the same also with employees. Sometimes they can come up with their own employee union and come up with their own constitution. But let's not forget that we also have an employer who also has his own conditions of service. Let's not forget that we also have the state. The state, they're also having the labor laws. So all these are governing the relationship between an employer and the employee. So how can we make sure that we practice good employee relations at all times? One of it is what we have already talked about as a topic, equal opportunities at workplace. So it is one method on how we can also look at practicing good employee relations. Yes. Because if you're giving equal opportunities to everyone, it means you relate well with your employees. Those are good employee relations. We'll talk about employee participation and empowerment. We'll talk about the concept of participation. We'll talk about collective bargaining. We'll talk about employee empowerment. How do we empower employees? So one of the issues in management that you have learned about is delegation. Delegation is one of the methods on how you are trying to empower an employee with certain responsibilities. Okay? That even though in your absence, someone can still stand on behalf of you, right? Yes. So we are looking at trying to empower also in terms of employees. Then number 11, we are going to look at grievance handling and disciplinary procedure. So in every organization, so long as there are 2 or more people involved, grievances will be there. Grievances, madando, yeah. So many things that you'll be complaining about. So those are known as grievances, misunderstandings. But the question is, how would those grievances be handled? Sometimes it can be between you and your immediate supervisor, your bosses, can be your peer, your colleague in the same department. So we need to have a procedure on how these particular grievances can be handled. Because otherwise, people will be boiling in their hearts and keeping it to themselves until to the extent that now they decide to leave the organization. Because they are looking at the working environment not to be what? Healthy. Okay? Enmity, backbiting in organizations. So these are all examples of bad habits in the organization, but we have to find a way on how certain grievances should be handled in the organization. So do we have a proper procedure on how we are going to handle these particular grievances? What is the importance of disciplinary action? So again, employees that are showing undesirable behavior, they have to be disciplined in the organization. What is the importance? Yes, other people should take a lesson from it. Yes, if somebody has been punished over some undesirable behavior, it means other people will learn from other people's mistakes and they will not do that. So that's just one of the importance of having a disciplinary action. So what are some of the approaches to disciplinary action? So you give out a first warning, a second warning, a third warning is a what? Is a what? A third warning is a what? In HR. Is a dismissal, isn't it? Yes, because now you said, no, I've given you too much what? Warnings. Now it's a dismissal. That is a procedure. That even according to law, that when somebody has done something wrong, you cannot just start with firing them. You need to issue a first warning, you need to issue a second warning. The third time, there's no warning. It's just now a letter of that now you have been what? Dismissed. Okay? So that is one of the approaches that we'll be looking at in terms of disciplinary action. And then number 11 and number 12, we'll talk about international human resource management. So we're not just going to look at international practices within Malawi locally, but we also have to look at it on the international market. So what are the aspects of international human resource? The controversy of HRM in a single model, the importance of ideology and culture to human resource in the international setting. So why? Because ideas may be different, culture may be different from one nation to the one to the other. So these create again a lot of controversies. One of the controversies that we see with international organization is concerning even how people are paid. Yeah? So if it's a Western country, so do we quote their salary in US dollars or in pounds or in whatever? Or do we have to quote based on the Malawi kwacha? Do we have to give them based on the minimum wage of Malawi, or do we have to give them minimum wage based on the parent where the company is coming from? Then we'll also talk about the developments in human resource management, where we'll simply define what strategic human resource is, personnel management and HRM, approaches to HRM and HRM types. We'll talk about also managing diversity. Oh yes, because we are people who are coming from different backgrounds. Worse still, if we're talking about an international company, then we are also in trouble, because then the diversity will be the gap will be very wide. And then we'll also talk about issues concerning harassment at work. Yeah, so obviously where there are two or more people, as we have talked about grievances, you'll find that there are also issues of harassment will be there. So harassment that we normally know, we always think about that, we always talk about sexual harassment, but there are also other types of harassment as well. Yeah, but basically that would be the syllabus that we'll be looking at. So below the syllabus, you'll find, the outline, you'll find that again there are prescribed textbooks, but there are also recommended textbooks that you can use in this particular module. If you want to find a specific book written applied, then you're going to face a challenge. Yeah? So basically, just look at books on HRM and look at these specific components. Okay? Is the topic of human resource planning there? Is the topic on recruitment and selection there? Is the topic of equal opportunities there? Then you're okay. Alright? But if you're going to search deliberately a book in applied HRM, you will not find it. Actually, even when you go on the prescribed and recommended textbook, you will not see one being given a title, applied human resource management. Okay? So the word applied is that basically we're just trying to apply human resource practices in different situations. Okay? So that's why we are talking about applying. Is that okay? Right. Okay, so let's define our subject before we move forward. I don't think it'll work there.
It doesn't?
Yeah, probably just plug it in on the computer. That would be way better. That's all.
Those who don't have a student ID